Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of The Woman in the Wall. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, you learn something new every day. I had never heard of the Magdalene Laundries. They were also referred to as the Magdalene Asylums, apparently. You think you know a lot of the skeletons that are in the institution as a whole of the church. You figured you know a lot of the skeletons in the closet, and then you find out something new like this. To be fair, we're never going to know every single skeleton in the church's closet, but we know quite a bit, but probably not nearly as much. But it's like, holy crap, that something like this existed and it went on for so long. I figured this is what this ended up being, what it was when we got that look at Lorna when she was younger and her mom wouldn't even look at her. I was like, right, you're having a baby out of wedlock. Your family is obviously extremely religious, and having a baby out of wedlock is extremely frowned upon. So, and she was taken, and the problem was, like, we saw later on when she was taken, when we got more context of that flashback, there was a neighbor that saw this going down, her begging not to be taken, and they just closed the blinds. Her parents just shut the door. Like, they kind of knew what they were sending her to, but they kind of didn't. I think because at that time, because this was, who knows, because laundries were kind of shut down officially, like, in the 90s. But who knows how long ago that was for Lorna. Like, maybe that was in the 90s, could have been in the 80s, or whatever the case may have been. But it was already a well-known institution, like the Magdalene Laundries at that point in time. So they knew what they were doing to some extent, but they were thinking like, oh, this is, maybe they didn't know everything that was going down at the laundries, but it might have also been a thing of they turned a blind eye. I'm so curious, and maybe we'll get some flashbacks with this. I'd love to know more about her relationship with her parents post being at those laundries, like what that did to their relationship. I mean, I'd be in a situation considering, like, not only what we know that it wasn't just babies that were taken from them. Some of the laundries like acted as like those mommy places as well, where they would take children. Sure, because later on, Lorna talks to like it was with two other women who went through the mother situation. But the laundries were just a place where women that were kind of, the word I saw used when I was Googling it, quote unquote, fallen women. So, for different reasons, because there was that older lady that the cops talked to later on in the episode. She was kind of like seen as a harlot because she was young, she was pretty, but she was being accused of stealing. Like, they're trying to make it seem like she was like, oh, she's up here trying to steal every person's man type of situation. That's why she got sent to the laundry. It wasn't just about, like, teen pregnancies or marriage out of having a baby out of wedlock. It wasn't even stuff like that always. It was just, if you were unbecoming as a woman, you got sent there. And some of those people would include prostitutes as well. I'm curious, which isn't an indictment against Amy or anything like that. I don't want that to be the situation. I don't want to be seen that way. But I'm curious if that was Amy's specific circumstances are. Because they said, like, oh yeah, like, they kind of hinted, like, Amy's had her run-ins with the law. And even later on, Detective Akandi noticed, like, the marks on her arm. So, like, she's been, it seems like she's been a drug user in the past. So I'm curious if it's a situation of, is that a byproduct of maybe she was working prostitution, or the simplest answer could easily be the trauma of everything she went through turned her to drugs, understandably so. So I'm curious to see what that is. But, like, prostitutes were thrown in to the Magdalene Laundries as well, so it could easily be, like, Amy could fall in that category. She could just be, like I said, drugs could have been like her way of dealing with the trauma and pain that she went through, I mean, we've only scratched the surface of just everything that happened, but there was, like, decades of abuse, I was even reading one where apparently there was, like, I know, and I will also say this was, like, a grain of salt, like, it was with Wikipedia, so I don't know, but, check your sources type of situation. But I was reading that apparently at one particular laundry there was like a mass grave of like 100 and some women. So I guess they pushed women so far that they ended up killing them, but then like hid the bodies because they didn't want to be found out. It's this like extremist religious group that just went too far they basically turned these women into labor and would abuse them, because in their way it's like, we're saving you. It's really horrendous situation, and it makes so much sense why Lorna's kind of the way she is. Because we haven't really gone deep. Once again, it's just the first episode. We don't know how long she's been sleepwalking, but it's a byproduct of her trauma. Because, I mean, we opened up with her in the middle of the road being like, how did I get here? So it seems like it happens periodically enough because... what's the woman who runs that little group? I'm going to butcher her name. It's like Neum. It might be her name. She said, like, yeah, some people saw you, sleepwalking. Like, it's a well-known thing that Lorna sleepwalks, but we don't know if it's something that went, like, because it only really started coming to the surface frequently, because this isn't set present day, it's set in 2015, because I think a lot of this stuff came to light in, like, 2013 is when, like, there was a real big push to, like, uncover all of this, but a lot of people would not acknowledge it. We even find out the tone they're in, Kilkern doesn't even acknowledge the laundries. There was even one here in this small town. They refuse to even acknowledge that because no one wants to admit fault for what's happening, because they like scapegoat it by being like, oh yeah, kind of like that had nothing to do with like the church in itself. That was a they don't want to label it as a laundry. It's like those are some people who did some crazy shit. That was like a training facility or whatever. Or either was saying like, oh, these are up and coming people like priests and nuns, like who were being trained and they were wilding, or is it just saying like it wasn't a laundry facility, it was a religious facility for training people, women in particular, to be good Catholic women type of thing. I don't know if that's kind of like what they meant by training. But once again, just to the larger point is they're not trying to acknowledge it at all. But once again, the point is we know that Lorna's been sleepwalking for a little while, but the question is like how long? And if 2013 is kind of like the period where a lot of this kind of started floating more closer to the surface, to the point that they're still talking about it on a radio, could be a situation of maybe Lorna's like, it probably like all this coming up again, resurfacing to the top, probably brought a lot of that trauma to the top for her. And now she's sleepwalking maybe for the past 2 years. Because they did say like the incident where she like basically smashed part of like the Virgin Mary's face, statue of the face with an axe, was like a year ago. So I'd say at least 2 years she's been, because that trauma's probably been buried deep so long, like she probably buried it around that time. Like I said, the aftermath of that place, her leaving, I'm curious like what happened. Like I wonder, like her parents might not be around anymore, maybe they are, like did the guilt ever get to them? Did they feel they were justified in what they did and what she went through? I'm so curious if we'll ever even touch on that. I hope we do, because when parents are shitty like that, you're just like, I want them to kind of get their comeuppance. Like, in your own twisted mind, you think you're doing good, but like, I think what it more so stems from is it's a small town and you're worried of the backlash you're going to get. Like, oh, our neighbors are going to talk and they're going to think certain things about us. It feels like it's more a perception thing rather than doing what's right for your child. Maybe in your own mind you do believe you're doing right by your child, but it feels like it's just more a perception thing to me. But it's like, because it's like, yeah, small community, church, there's going to be a lot of gossip about you. You're going to become like town pariahs. Once again, like everyone seemed to be in the know about it, but no one wants to like own up to it. Everyone's just kind of like, no, there was no laundry here in Kilkern. Like, what are you talking about? Especially when it comes to Massey. Like, he's a local cop that's like, hey, I don't want trouble. I like things simple. And so when this whole murder starts for him, it's like, no. I don't want, let's get this solved so I could go back to having a boring town. But even he's doing his own job of like keeping things boring by like, let's not worry about the laundry and stuff like that. Because at no point did he bring up like, because the victim in this episode is a priest. It's Father Percy. It's that type of situation where it's like, Massey, it's like, does he know more than he's letting on? Probably, but it is also like, it's choosing to be ignorant. It seems like that it ends up being a lot of this town's case of everyone's choosing to be ignorant. No one wants to acknowledge that. It's like, as long as we pretend like it didn't exist, it didn't happen. Which just makes those women, because there was even one of the women at the gathering was like, yeah, but what if they call us liars for it? Because no one wants to acknowledge what happened and what was done to them. How are you going to fight against something like that? Which obviously, real world wise, there has been restitution to some extent to like some of the survivors of all of this, but it doesn't really make up for, money can only make up for so much of like the pain and tribulation. I mean, because even Amy said it herself. It's like, no, I don't want money. I want blood. I want the Pope to come down in his fucking Pope mobile and make an apology to me directly. It's like understandable. Like that means way more. But even then, there's, I think even present day, there's still kind of like a little disembowelment of just like, it's not what you think it is, and we're not going to acknowledge as much of our involvement in that type of situation from the church's perspective. Hey, like I said, this is something new to me. I might be talking out of pocket here. Once again, I'm an ignorant, person, because like I do not know a lot of world history. Like barely know all the history of this country, because even here in the U.S. I'm learning new things all the time, but yeah, like, especially I know very little bit about Ireland. I'm screwing up here, sorry. Ireland's history. Could not get the word Ireland out. I'm so sorry. But I don't, my world knowledge is like very limited. So, I am coming at this from a very, from a very ignorant standpoint, and also I'm not the most religious person, so I don't pay that much attention to religion. But not even, I would be about to say tangentially. It is directly connected religion, but like I don't pay enough of attention. I know, like I said, the church as an institution, it's like there's a lot of shady shit there, but it's like, that's the general consensus. But it's like I said, a lot of them like finer details I don't know. Like I said, just learning new things every day. It's interesting too because we had that opening where we got introduced to Detective Akande, and he's with his mom watching Columbo, and he says it's not a whodunit, and she's like, "What do you mean? Of course it's a whodunit." He's like, "No, because you see who the murderer is like at the beginning of every episode. So how is it a whodunit when you already know who did it?" But it's like, yeah, it's kind of more of a why done it. Why did you do it? And the motive ends up being the thing. And I guess it almost feels like very like foreshadowing and kind of a larger commentary on. I mean, I feel like those have come up a lot more. Like if you've ever seen the show The Sinner, the show The Sinner was based around that entire premise of you kind of knew who done it the entire time. It's just understanding why, the motivation behind it was the biggest piece to the puzzle, because there was a lot more to it. And it's kind of very similar tonally and just story beat wise of potentially we know who's responsible for this being Lorna, but there could always be a twist of, yeah, you think you already know who done it, and then you twist things around where it's like, no, it's more about the why it was done, or it might be a red herring where it's like, oh, you think you know who it is the entire time until we find out, no, it was actually someone else entirely. That Lorna might be being framed for some of it. Some of the murders, other things she's doing, that's definitely her, because we saw her commit some crimes, but we haven't actually seen her commit the murders. But we'll see. It might just be so straightforward. Like I said, it might just be all about the why, but it might actually turn out to be actually about the who. Once again, it's a larger conversation about trauma and these Magdalene laundries or Magdalene asylums. I wasn't expecting the reveal where it turns out that Detective Akande has a connection to Percy, because he didn't seem like he was too receptive to that other cop being like, well, maybe it was a break-in gone wrong, or he was a priest. And Akande was like, what's that supposed to mean? I was like, I'd assume that's in reference to like pedophilia. So I figured that's what he was going to. I figured that was what he was referencing. And I love that the other cop was like, oh, Detective Akande, is this you? And the guy was like, don't be racist. But then the funny thing is like, no, it actually was Akande. It's like, oh yeah, like he knew Percy. Like Percy was his priest when he was younger. It's actually like I was kind of a troublemaker back then. He kind of put me on the right path. Now that's going to be that interesting thing, because obviously by the time he met Father Percy, it was well after his connection to the Magdalene laundry. So that's going to be an interesting thing for Akande to have to kind of come face to face with the man who made you into who you are, who kind of set you on the right path. The good he's done, does that outweigh the terrible shit he did at the laundries? Like, how do you come, that it's the beautiful duality of humanity of just like people are capable of doing good, and they are capable of being shitty, terrible people. And sometimes they're just shitty, terrible people who do a lot to cover up. They overcompensate, trying to make up for the shitty things they did. Like, once again, we don't know if Father Percy actually looks back on what he did. It's like, I'm sorry, I actually did something terrible. I feel bad. I thought I was in the right. Or does he still think he was in the right? That's going to be the big question of character. Does not absolve him of everything. He will never be absolved. You know, once again, from a religious standpoint, maybe he will be. But on a personal level, it's like, nah, fuck that dude. You know? Everyone's got that perspective. Even Amy, when she found out, was like, oh, he's dead? Good. You know, if anything, I'd want him to, like, suffer. I wouldn't want it to be quick and painless. I'd want him to suffer. Got his head bashed in, and I think he fell down the stairs. Kind of quick and painless. Not really, but not the drawn-out death I'm sure Amy would wanted it to have been. It's just going to be interesting because it's like you're kind of caught in this lane because, like, right, this case is personal to you, but also you're finding out this person that was important and foundational for you being on the path that you are down, that wasn't that great of a person, and potentially the hurt behind all of this is connected to him, and the opposite ends up he put you on the right path, but he ended up destroying Lorna's life and so many other people's lives. So there is this interesting parallel, but I think that's the parallel they're going to make of, like, this is someone who got the good side of him, this is someone who got the bad side of him, especially considering, hey, Conde, you came into his life after he was, like I said, potentially overcompensating for the terrible things that he's done in his past. So, like I said, it's just going to be an interesting conundrum for that character to kind of really deal with over the course of the season as he continues to investigate. Because he's the only one that seems to really, really want to be pushing this. Like I said, Massey just wants this all to be, like, done. He's like, whoever did this had to be an outsider. There's no way it could have been someone. But it's like, yeah, Conde almost wants to, like, shove it in his face. At first, he's like, no, like, but it does show that our killer is close by. But also that I was right. And there is something going on in your boring town. It's almost like he gave you, in the most subtle way, but not so subtle, he gave you he flipped you the biggest birds that he could, you know? It's kind of like, you asshole, I told you what this was, and you wanted to pretend like it wasn't. You've heeded my investigation. You stopped me here and there when I'm trying to push further and further. You stopped me. Now you kind of have no choice now. Even though he's the one that literally says earlier in the episode, I don't do anything without, because the last time I kind of tried to do my actual job, you Dublin boys came in and kind of gave me some shit, you know? So it's like, I just follow orders, and it's like, right, you're so quick to kind of, like, try and shovel this away, but now it's like, yeah, like, this is going to be their investigation, specifically Conde's, and so it's like, you're going to have to kind of follow his lead. Like, he's going to take even more charge before. You're kind of leading him through, but you're kind of, like, making sure it was a guided way to lead through, because he didn't want a big investigation, because he wants to keep the town quiet and boring. But it's like, no, this town was never quiet, was never boring. You just chose to keep your head down. So many people chose to keep their head down because they'd rather be ignorant than acknowledge the terrible shit that's going down here. I thought it was so interesting that, you know, and as the episode progressed, the fact this Lorna has, like, a picture of Jesus up, and what was our first time seeing that picture? She had a knife through it, and she stabbed the knife in there so hard she actually struggled to pull it out, because it not only went through the picture, not only went through the wall, literally got stuck in her piping because of that. So, but it's interesting, because also there's a dark room that she has, that she literally, I don't know if she was, like, a photographer, or because she sews. That's where she currently works. It's like a place that, like, sews dresses and stuff, but or, like, you know, does fittings for dresses and kind of, like, brings stuff in or brings them out if they need to be in that way. But she doesn't even go into the room. What she does is she takes the picture. The door's cracked open. She, like, puts the picture in there and makes sure to close it. She even locks the door and has the key. She doesn't keep the key with her. She even puts it, like, on a shelf nearby. It's like, it's there because I guess it's meant to be a thing of, I can get in there if I need to, but more so than anything, it's just, I can stop myself if I ever try to get in a room, or stop myself from ever going in there, even in my sleepwalking state, because there's an extra step of, maybe I won't be consciously aware of, hey, I need to grab the key. You know, there's an extra step to it there's enough room for her to be like, stop, don't go in there. Because if you notice too, they focus on it. There's a box sitting on that table, and I'm curious if that's stuff related to her child that was taken from her all those years ago. Is that stuff that like related to as some baby stuff, or like is it like the blanket and stuff like that? Because she specifically says like she doesn't want to look into, because Neum was like, oh, I can help you find your baby or whatever, but she was like, because she wants Lorna to kind of participate with the other like women that were in the Magdalene laundries as well. And even then later on, she's like, only like some of you showed up. So obviously not a lot of people want to be like constantly reminded of all of that. Like, can anything really been done? Because it seems like there's been people who've tried in the past, but no one succeeded. But Nima's like, no. This group of people, they're legit. They're actually going to potentially get you compensation. They're going to force this matter if need be. So there's probably been so many women have been through the rigmarole of this all, and it's like, I'm not going down this path again. It's too painful. I don't need this bubbling to the surface again. I want to leave it in the past. I just want to move on. This isn't helping. So maybe that's why some of them didn't show up, because it doesn't seem like it's their first meeting. They've met before, and I guess Lorna just never went to any of these potentially. So she got reached out to by someone who left her a letter saying like, hey, I can help you. I know what happened to your child. I can help you get your child back. Oh, right. I know what point I was making before I went on my, before I shift over to that. I want to go back to what I was breaking. My point I was bringing up was she had said her child was dead. I wonder, did they try and like, did the church like lie to her? Like, are there some records or whatever to be like, no, your child was given away or adopted by someone? I'm wondering, did when the truth came out, did the Magdalene laundries lie and be like, yeah, your child died, just because they, for whatever reason, to cover their tracks even more, it's just like, it just pretend like the baby died after childbirth or something like that. Maybe that's what that was kind of implying, and maybe those are like records and stuff like that to prove that. I don't know, like whatever, like it's got whatever it is in that box, it's got to be related to the baby in that capacity. Who knows in what exact way, but either way, she getting back to what I was bringing up earlier, she got a note from someone saying like, oh, I can help you find your baby. Let's meet at this bar. And she waited, but they never showed up. But then like she's kind of drunk. She meets a guy who's like, oh, I guess you got stood up. He probably meant more so in the way of, oh, you're waiting for somebody, you got stood up, just in a normal sense. But she's drunk, she's angry because this person's supposed to be there. So now she's kind of like a little conspiracy, being like, wait, what do you mean? What do you know? She fell, hit her head, but then she ends up back home, and it's like, okay, how did I get here? Poetic that, like, because it was like a wedding party or maybe like bachelorette party or whatever, and yeah, they put devil horns on her and she woke up with the devil horns, interestingly enough. So maybe she got into a little devilish criminal behavior. But yeah, she goes into her dark room because she sees the doors open, and lo and behold, which obviously, like, once again, I don't know if it's like meant to be an actual dark room. When I'm referring to a dark room, I mean like a photography dark room. I don't think it's meant to be that way. I don't know. The red lighting makes me feel like it's meant to be like that. I always associate those with dark rooms. Maybe, I don't know if there's any other reason to, but I'm sure it also, from a cinematic standpoint, it's also supposed to represent like evil that's happened in her life and what's happened to her. And ironically enough, that would be the room that she finds the dead body in, because she's even asking later on like, oh, the other women that were a part of this, like, who were they? Because now she's wondering like, oh, this person I met with, the person I killed, was she potentially like another person from the Magdalene laundry? Because I figured, I was like, is this where the title of the show comes from? Like, oh, the woman in the wall? Well, we get the answer to that in the episode, because it's like the moment she dragged the body out into her like living space, and where like she had busted the hole open. I was like, so she could fix the pipe. I was like, oh, you're literally about to put her in the wall. I was like, okay, so that's where the title of the episode, the show comes from. But then I was like, well, you had to ask. I was like, they're going to make you think you're about to slice and dice the body, but you're just going to like put her in the wall, right? You're not going to like cut her up. Okay, good. You just like, and the way you prop her body up too in the wall, it's like interesting. I wonder, is she going to put the Jesus photo back up there? Probably not. Or not unless she replaces it, because like, that Jesus photo has a knife hole in it. And the problem is, she's going to have to like redo some of the wall. And that's the thing. The detective's already taken an interest in you. And so Akanda's going to notice, the paint on this wall's super new. Those are the type of little details that kind of come up during an investigation. I'm like, oh, you redid this wall recently? She'd be like, yeah. Can I even lie? Be like, yeah, there was a pipe issue, some leakage, so I had to go in there, fix the pipe, and then like I ended up like repairing it. So I'm like, there's an easy way to lie about it because she did have to actually repair it. So, but that's definitely going to be something that's going to catch his interest. Maybe he won't immediately fixate on catch it, but it'll eventually circle back around to that story beat, I'm sure. What I think is so interesting too is obviously Lorna ends up burning the car that ended up being Percy's car, because after she killed Percy, she drove, well, quote unquote killed Percy. Once again, we don't know for sure if she did it or whether she's being framed or not. But she ended up destroying the car. There's a part of you that's like, well, subconsciously she was trying to destroy evidence. But I'd also say that could be the red herring, because if we saw earlier in the episode when she saw the car driving, because I didn't even notice the little detail of, oh, it's the same car as the guy that picked her up when she was younger. Oh my God, that was a young Percy that picked her up and took her to the Magdalene Laundry. It's like interesting, because I luckily they put that scene there to kind of like give you more context to show you from the corner, like, oh, it's the same car. I would have never pieced that together on my own. So I know some people are like, oh, shows treat you like you're dumb. I'm glad they did it. I mean, for one, we got a little more context with the scene. It wasn't just to show off the car. It helped in that moment in that regard too, but also to show like, hey, that neighbor closing their blinds, like her dad immediately going inside, like her not having a choice, being dragged away. And so when she sees the car again, when she gets a better look at it, who does she see in the back? Herself banging on the window. And you're like, oh, the tragic metaphor that is her innocence was taken from her. Like, there was so much taken from her, not only like her baby, the pain and trauma she went through. Like, once again, we have no idea what else she went through at that laundry. Besides having your baby taken is bad enough, but who knows what else she was put through at the Magdalene Laundry. So it's like, that's where I'm like, it wasn't just about getting rid of evidence. She was destroying that car because it was a little bit of her kind of taking back her power. That was the car that took her away, that led to everything that happened, like a lot of the pain and trauma she went through. So it was about literally burning that. So that's why I'm feeling like it's too much of a setup to be like, she did it. It feels more like she most likely got framed. Someone framed her because they figured it'd be easier to do it. So obviously one suspect is Amy, but she seems a little too obvious too. So, but hey, once again, maybe like Lorna's trauma has created not just a sleepwalking situation, but there's a little bit of a dissociative personality thing going on there too because of the trauma. So like her darker side could be manifesting in that way and could be committing all these crimes. It seems like that's an element to the show, but like that's when I'm like, did she actually kill Percy? Did she kill this woman who we find out at the end of the episode? Lorna finally remembers, like, who is this woman? She's a nun. Specifically, she's the nun that took away her baby. Like, that last time she saw her baby, this nun was there. So that's why she would know. So I guess maybe after all this time, so much stuff resurfacing. Because even at the time, she looked kind of sad about, like, what we're doing. But she was probably told, like, no, we're doing good. We're doing right. God is on our side. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever heinous or bullshit they had to tell themselves or be told to justify the heinous shit that they were doing. So, but maybe finally the guilt got to her. It's like, yeah, you wait till all these decades later to finally fess up and come to me. So it's like, because she's the one that they saw Lorna leaving the bar with her. Or the person that worked at the bar was like, yeah, I saw you leaving with her, but I don't know who she is. But we'll probably have to wait to find out more, but because she wouldn't know out of anyone what happened, because she's probably the last person to really see the baby before what happened. So yeah, her baby's not dead. It's most likely her baby was given away to adoption, like either like a priest or a nun, someone there at the church took the baby, or they just gave it away. Like, who knows? I mean, because we did see those articles, like, where are Ireland's children, So, it's like, were they given away to other families or what? Like, once again, I'm so curious, because I didn't do a deep enough dive, but I'm like, what was their twisted, like, justification for this? Like, like, the holy mission, like, how would you think you're right for doing what you're doing? Because I guess there's that element of, like I said, the extremist lane of any religion where people think, like, oh, yeah, like, I'm trying to correct whatever failed behavior you have or whatever. So maybe that's all the justification they had in their mind of like why they believed they were right, that this was their holy mission. Once again, this was going on when I think I was reading, it went from like the 18th century to the 20th century. So it's like this was going on for so long, and it was such a common enough thing. Like I said, even to the point like Lorna's family, like it was just kind of common enough practice and thing of like, yeah, this is what we do. So hell of a way to start a series. Like I said, it's a lot to take in. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I didn't really go into as much as I wanted to because I focus on a lot of like the actual circumstances of the stuff. And obviously it's crucial to the story, but I feel like I spent a lot of time on that and just like the real world like thing of it all as well. But it's a fascinating and just like fascinating in the sense of, man, it's just a reminder just how shitty humans and how much shitty people can be and how people can use religion to justify the most, once again, heinous acts, you know. But either way, I'm interested to see where all of this goes. Obviously, this is going to be it's a limited series. It's only 6 episodes in total, but I'm excited to kind of go down this journey and see how this all ends up unraveling and finding out the truth behind the things. Like I said, it just feels poetic because of the whole who done it Columbo conversation at the beginning. Like I said, it becomes more about the why done it, but I feel like it still will be a who done it because I don't think it was Lorna who did it. But hey, I could easily be proven wrong. Like to be fair, like the woman died, and to be fair, like she was going, like she was sleepwalking, and we've seen twice that she's done stuff while she's sleepwalking. She's destroyed a statue of the Virgin Mary. She's also blown up a car. The explosion is actually what woke her up. What I thought was interesting, though, if you notice, Amy's the one that saw her walking down the street with the axe, which Amy's store, maybe it just happens to be in the way that she needed to go to get to the car. But my question would then be like, does she normally have to walk past Amy's store? So has Amy seen her more often? And I mean, once again, it's a small town, so plenty of people have seen her sleepwalking regardless. And just most people are just like, yeah, it is what it is. It's Lorna, so they're not gonna think too much of it. They're just gonna think, she's a little off her rocker. So I don't know. Because also Amy kind of has her issues with all of this as well. So for her, it's like she's probably not going to say anything because she's going to be fine with what Lorna's doing. Because it's like, yeah, you're actually doing something. Maybe Amy feels like, hey, I wish I could do something. Like I said, could easily be Amy, but it feels like she's too obvious of a choice. So might be someone else just using Lorna as the fall guy or woman in this particular case. Like I said, we'll have to wait to see where all this ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.